In this video, I'm going to share with you the exact framework that I use to help Christians who've been hurt by the church to heal and to flourish with God again. And so, if you are a Christian that's been hurt by the church and you're going through all the various emotions, you feel lost, you feel confused, you feel abandoned by God, you feel rejected, and may feel like God is absent and silent. And many times you can begin to question, am I a problem? Have I ruined my calling with God? I relate to all of these. And so, if that's you, this video is definitely going to help you. Now, I do want to say as well before we get started that this video is not for those who don't want to heal and grow, meaning there are many who just want to talk about it, but they don't want to change. And so this video is not going to be helpful for you. So if that's you, it'll be easier just to exit out and go and enjoy your day. But if you are somebody who wants to heal and you want to grow from this, then this will definitely help you. Now, maybe like myself, you've tried various things to try and beat and overcome church hurt. Maybe you've tried talking to others. And I tried this and I learned very quickly that there are few people who can comprehend and understand and relate to what you're talking about. And so many times it was put back on me. I was blamed and I'd be accused of being divisive for even talking about it. So it wasn't helpful. If anything, it only added to the hurt. So maybe you've tried that. Or maybe you've heard the whole just forgive phrase. And I get it. I had many people who would say to me, just forgive, just forgive, just forgive. And I knew the scriptures around that, but my heart just wasn't there yet. I don't know why, it just wasn't, rightly or wrongly. And so many times this phrase and people saying it, it only added condemnation to me. It didn't help me. It actually added more weight and pressure and condemnation. And maybe you're experiencing that as well. People are forcing you to forgive. Or maybe you've given into the cliche of time heals. And this is very popular, but it's also a cliche that prolongs the pain unnecessarily. And the way that I explain it is that time in and of itself does not heal. Now, time may have purposes for healing, but it does not heal in and of itself. And this is why people can go 10, 20, 30, 40 years and yet still be the same person they were years ago. Why? Because time in and of itself does not heal. And so many times what this cliche does instead is actually justifying apathy or fear. And so now instead of facing the pain as we have to, we try to just give it out to some external thing like time to do the work for us, but it doesn't work like that. Or maybe you've given into other cliches or Christian cliches like God will do it or God will save me in this or it's up to God to do it. And there are right ways and contexts to say this, but in this context, many times it has become the justification for apathy or fear again. And so I remember the story, it's a fiction story, but it's of a guy who's in a flood and he's standing on his house and he's praying to God saying, God, save me. 5 minutes later, a man comes in a kayak and says, jump in, I'll save you. And the man responds to the kayak and says, no, no, God will save me. So the kayaker takes off. 5 minutes later, a boat comes by and says, jump in, I'll save you. And the man replies, no, it's all good, God will save me. Long story short, this man dies, he goes to heaven, he's standing before God and says, God, why didn't you save me? And God says to him, I sent you the kayaker. I sent you the man in the boat. And so many times we use the same cliche or those like it, where without realizing, many times God works through people. So there may be people in your life right now who God is actually sending to you. Maybe this video here is sent to you by God, who knows? But many times we can use Christian cliches again as a reason or justification for apathy or fear, and it just does not help us. Or you may be suppressing the hurt. And suppressing the hurt, we know that will always prolong the pain, the hurt unnecessarily. And it's just another way of saying we're sweeping it under the rug. But whenever you sweep things under the rug, you eventually trip over the rug. And so maybe like me, you've tried all these things, you've tried all of them and they're just not working, they're not helping. And the reason for that is because the hurt, it must be faced. It must be faced. And so the way that I like to explain it in facing the hurt is that whenever you and I experience hurt of any kind, not just church hurt, let's say this is our church hurt experience. And if we were only presented with this, then we become a victim of this and it becomes a dead end. But your Father is so good that whenever we experience hurt of any kind, He also slips in this invitation to a redemptive process alongside that. So R standing for redemption. And so whenever you and I experience or perceive any problem in life, your good Father always has a corresponding promise in place that leads us to redemption and to healing. And so he doesn't just leave us lost in this one place. He actually offers a path of redemption, which then causes us to be victors in him instead of victims of the problem. And what we need to know is that the pain is actually the invitation to our process of healing and overcoming. And so that's why those previous examples don't work, because we trial them or we give into cliches or Christian cliches or apathy or whatever. But the pain has to be faced. So you have to face the pain. Now, one of the reasons why Revive works so well is that number one, we help people to face the pain. So we know that pain is the invitation to the process. So we empower them, we walk alongside them. But also we provide the necessary frameworks. Now, I'll expand on this in a moment, But the short of it is that when we grow up in a Christian space or our Christian journey, we develop all these frameworks, and these frameworks determine how we live, how we interact, how we relate to God. But when we experience church hurt, those frameworks now come into question. And this is one of the reasons why church hurt is so shocking and why it confuses us and why it's unexpected, because those frameworks did not allow for it. Those frameworks did not prepare us for it, and neither can they. And so what many people do is they try to go back to those frameworks and get stuck in this tension and this confusion of not knowing where they're going, because those frameworks can't help you now that you've experienced church hurt. You need new frameworks. Or I like to say, you need new wineskin. And so what we do here at Revive is we provide the necessary frameworks that don't become a hindrance, a block, or a prison to you like the old ones. Instead, they become liberty for you to then heal and then flourish with God again. So that's one of the reasons why Revive works so well, is we provide the necessary frameworks. Secondly, we don't force outcomes. So similar to that whole just forgive, just forgive, just forgive, we don't do that. Instead, we provide the necessary frameworks. We also partner with Holy Spirit, and then we allow those outcomes to happen naturally. And so your Father is so good and he is so wise that he knows exactly what he wants to put his finger on at what time. And so we don't force outcomes. Rather, we partner with Holy Spirit and we allow him to move according to his wisdom. And then finally, we've lived this. I have lived this reality of church. I've walked through the thick of it, all the way from hurt right up to healing and even reconciliation, but then also flourishing and abundance. And so we've lived this entire reality. We know the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the pits, the peaks. I have been in this pit of church hurt. I got out of that pit of church hurt, but now I go back to help others come out as well. So that's why Revive works so well for so many people. Now, I think it's important to mention as well that there are many common fears that people experience through this. So maybe this is you. Maybe you have this fear of not being able to overcome it. I totally get it. It's very hard when you're in it. It's very hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel because it's very dark. So I relate to you. Or maybe you can't see intimacy with God again. And there's two things I want to say about this. Number one, you absolutely can. But also number two, intimacy with God on this side of church hurt is very different to intimacy that I experienced prior to church hurt. And so there's this journey through that, and you're actually in this journey, whether you realize it or not. But intimacy on this side is far deeper and far richer, and is very different from your current experiences or previous experiences of intimacy. Maybe you feel unworthy. Again, feeling like I'm a problem, feeling like I'm lost, and all those different things. It is just not true. Or a biggie for me was I didn't know who to trust. And so I didn't know people's intentions, and I didn't know if people had good intentions with me. And so I was very guarded around who I was around, who I would talk to. But what I also learned later is that in order to experience healing and joy and peace and all that good stuff, is I also had to open my heart up to trust or risk having my trust broken again as well. And so many times we guard our heart from the hurt, but in guarding from the hurt, we're also guarding or blocking out all the good stuff as well. So I totally get it nonetheless. It's very hard to know who you can trust through this process. Or maybe you're not even sure if God is with you. Like I said before, I felt like God had abandoned me, that had ruined my calling. And so it almost becomes this defeated place of why even bother? And so if that's you, I want you to know that you are not alone. You're not going crazy. And these fears are very common and very normal. You are not alone in this. Many of us experience it. But also to help you, I think it would be beneficial to share with you a little bit about my story, and then also some of our clients who had these exact same fears, but also how their journey of facing the hurt has now led to them to healing and flourishing and abundance with God again. So in my journey, for example, I was told by two Christian leaders that my life was cursed. And the reason for that is because I didn't belong to a local church, or I didn't do things like tithe according to their standard. And so they said that my life would be cursed. I wouldn't get married, I wouldn't have kids, I would always be poor, wouldn't have money or whatever, and that I'm cursed. And so as a young man, single young man, it was very hard for me to deal with and to handle. I felt confused, I doubted myself, and I began to wonder if I was a problem. And it's very hard when you're in there. It's one thing to talk about it or hear about it, but when you're in it, it's very hard. Anyway, fast forward 10 years, and my life is definitely not cursed, it is blessed. And so I am married. I have 4 beautiful children. I'm living this wonderful life where I get to be a part of an awesome community. I have influence in my community, and I'm walking in a sense of purpose and intimacy with God that is greater than anything I've experienced before. And it is just awesome. And I also get to be a part of blessing the body of Christ. I get to lay my life down for the body of Christ that even at times in the past, they were the ones who were firing the arrows. And even now, they're still some of the ones firing the arrows at me. But I get to lay my life down for them, and it is such a joy and such a privilege. So maybe you relate to my story a bit, or maybe you relate to Sam. So he was part of the leadership within his church, and he experienced mistreatment and false accusation. And this sent him down a deep spiral of bitterness, anger, rage, depression, and just feeling like he didn't know how to control his life anymore. He was just out of control. And anyway, Revive put language to his experience and it gave him a higher view, helped him to see exactly what was going on, what was happening for him. And after 3 years, he was finally getting free again from the hurt and he was enjoying intimacy with God again. And to see the change in him, not just in his language and the way that he's carrying himself, but in his eyes, you see the light in his eyes come back, the joy, his laughter, but also the way that he was relating to his family again. It was so good. So maybe you relate to Sam. Or maybe you relate to Anna. So Anna grew up a pastor's kid, and as you can understand, for many of them, they are under this expectation, whether spoken or unspoken. And so for Anna, this led to her being criticized so many times to the point where she finally believed, or she eventually believed, that she was a problem. That she was a problem not just for God, but also for people. And so this was very, very hard for her. But what Revive done for her is that we helped her to realize she is not a problem. We put clarity around some of her journey and her unique journey and what that looks like and what that means. And then the freedom that she was able to experience was just awesome. I mean, the way that she would cry on the calls around, not just the hurt going, but the love of God that she was experiencing and the feeling, the freedom that she was experiencing again was just awesome to see. So maybe you relate to Anna. Or maybe you relate to James. So James was a young man, and you know of many young men, full of energy, full of zeal. And so he was a youth leader, and he helped to run a lot of the events and the ministries. But he was emotionally abused and manipulated by his pastor. And so this blew his confidence, not just as a Christian, but as an individual in general. And it just threw him in a really dark and depressing space. But what Revive was able to do for him, we restored his confidence. So we helped to reveal and restore his identity in the Father, show him who he truly was again. And now, the life that he's living now, it is awesome to see the difference where this young man can go from just darkness and devastation to now joy, abundance, walking in purpose of the Father, and intimacy with God again. And as he says, it feels amazing. So maybe you relate to James. But all of that to say is that healing is your portion. You do not have to stay where you are. Healing is available for you, and your good Father has put out that invitation. He's calling you into deeper healing and abundance with Him. So let's get into the exact framework. So these are the 4 pillars to freedom. Now, when these 4 pillars are done in order, the outcomes happen. When they're not, the outcomes don't happen. And so these 4 pillars are in a specific order for a specific reason. And this is the exact framework that has helped many of these people that I've just showed you to get healed, to get free, and to flourish with God again. So let's get into it. So here are the 4 pillars to freedom. First one, mindset. Second, heart set. Third, rebuild. And fourth, purpose. All right, so let's start on mindset. So mindset has to do with the frameworks that I was talking about before. So mindset, frameworks, understandings, beliefs. So prior to our church hurt experience, you and I develop all these different frameworks and understandings and beliefs. And so what happens is that when we experience church hurt, those frameworks no longer serve you. They can't serve you. If anything, they become a cap and they become a prison for you. And this is why church hurt is confusing, why it takes us by shock, because those frameworks did not and cannot prepare you for church hurt. And so what you need is new frameworks. You need new wineskins so that you can receive the new wine. And so part of the mindset pillar is that we tear down some of these old frameworks that are not going to help you. In fact, they're going to be a detriment to you. They're going to be a prison for you. And then what we do is we instill or we give lessons around these new frameworks, these new mindsets, these new wineskins that will now help you to enter into the heart set. So the way that I like to explain it is that the mindset is like the doorway, and this doorway will determine whether or not you enter into the heart. And so if those mindsets and frameworks are wrong, then that doorway is going to stay locked. But as soon as you get the right mindsets and the right frameworks, that door now opens and now we can enter into the heart set. So pillar number 2, heart set. So this is where those hurts reside. Now, this is just a broken heart I'm trying to draw here. So this is where the hurts reside. And many of those hurts, they may have been buried there for years, they may be fresh, they may be raw, but now that we can enter into the heart, we can deal to those hurts, we can invite the Father's love in, and what happens here is those hurts now get released, they get removed, and His love now begins to replace and fill that space. And this is a very refreshing and liberating feeling. It is just beautiful. The joy you experience, the lightness that you experience. And here's where we realize how long we've been carrying so many of these hurts for so long. Many of them we didn't know was there as well. but through getting into the heart, dealing to the hurts, inviting his love in, we're now able to get free. And this leads to the third part of rebuild, is that you're so free now, you're so released of the hurt, it's like you're given this brand new green pasture. And so from here, you're able to rebuild your life on a strong foundation. And so in rebuild, what we like to talk about is rebuilding the whole man. So when it comes to kingdom men, kingdom women, kingdom people, they steward the whole man. So that's spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, relationally. They develop the whole man. And the reason for this is that in developing the whole man, we're now able to build greater resilience and strength. And this resilience and strength will help us when we face future challenges. So this is just a fiery arrow, for example, being fired at you. But because you've rebuilt the whole man and you're far more resilient, those arrows now get canceled, they get blocked. So an example from my story is that many of the actions, the behaviors, the words that I experienced or during or prior to my church journey, I still experience many of them today, but they have no effect on me now. What changed? Me. Because I rebuilt myself, the whole man, the kingdom man. I've grown in resilience and strength and confidence in the Father, that now those same actions, behaviors, arrows, they no longer affect me. So that's a third pillar, rebuild. Rebuild the whole man. The fourth and final pillar is purpose. This is where we now get back on kingdom assignment. So this is my crown. And this is where we find out exactly who have you been fashioned and formed for? Who have you been created for? What is your gift to the planet? What is your current assignment right now? And we get you back into kingdom assignment. And this is all about running your race and fulfilling your unique purpose in the kingdom. So one of the feelings that people often feel during church is they feel lost. They feel like they don't fit in. But part of purpose is you get restored to know exactly where I fit in, who I'm called to, and now you go out to serve and lay your life down for the world. So those are the 4 pillars to freedom. And when those 4 pillars are in place, when the mindset is in place, when you've got the right heart set, you're released of the hurts and you're free from that, and then you're rebuilding the whole man and you're back on kingdom assignment, well, now you are flourishing in life. Now, I do want to point out one more thing here, is that there is basically 2 parts to this. Mindset and heart set has to do with healing. Rebuild and purpose has to do with flourishing. Now, what I often see are there are many people who will experience healing or they'll get healed of church hurt, for example. And all that is kind of the way that I explain it is that many of them get healed, but they don't move into growth. And so what happens is that it's like a book. They close the chapters of the past, but they fail to realize that there are these blank pages here that God wants to walk out with you. And so instead of healing and flourishing with God again, it's like they just become this healed version of their old self. So they may be healed and they may have closed the chapters of old, which is great, and they may have relief, but they don't step into the growing or to the flourishing. And so they fail to realize that there are these blank pages here, this abundant life that God is actually calling you into and wants to walk out with you. And this is why in the Revive program, it's both healing and flourishing. Why? Because he's in the business of redemption, that it's not just about getting you healed, but it's also taking you into the abundant life that waits on the other side. And so some examples of this are a couple of our clients here. So this individual, for example, for 3 years, her gift of music was shut down when she experienced church hurt. So she'll be writing every day, singing all the time, but now it was shut down for 3 years. 3 weeks into the Revive program, she was now facing some of these hurts. She was releasing those hurts. The love of the Father was replacing it. And unexpectedly and unknown to us, this gift of this dormant gift was now bubbling up again. It was revived again. And now she was back to writing. In fact, this photo here she sent me, she bought a guitar that exact week. She started writing and singing again. So this is an example of God redeeming not just the hurt and healing, but also the abundance, pulling out the goodness that has been placed in you. Another example here, 6-figure promotion. Now I got this message and she said here, never in my life did I think I'd see this amount of money. What's really interesting about this story is that in the weeks leading up to this promotion, we were dealing to the hurts, she was getting free, she was getting liberated, but we were also speaking to her identity as a beloved daughter of the Father, and understanding and knowing her value in God and the kingdom. When she got this promotion, the manager said to her, let this be a sign of your value and worth. And so it was amazing for us to see that this was working now, even in a secular space, for example, that what we were focusing on in the spiritual kingdom space, the world was recognizing it as well. And so it's not about the guitar, it's not about the money, rather it's about the inner change that is happening. And these things are simply an outward reflection or manifestation of that inner change. So again, this is a part of it. It's not just healing, but it's also about flourishing and growing and stepping into the abundance that awaits you on the other side of church hurt. And so you have a choice to make. Do you stay where you are or do you move forward? And one way that I can explain it is like this. This is where everything that we've experienced prior to church hurt. So we grew up in a church, we're part of the ministry, we're doing all our church Christian activities. It's awesome. But then we experience church hurt. And it's like this other reality opens up now where we begin to question, is there something wrong with me? Where is God in this? I feel lost. I feel abandoned. How can people that I've done life with become so cold so quickly? It's just a very dark space. And this is where you're at right now. You're stuck in this place of transition. But then there are others like myself who have overcome the church hurt, and we live in this reality out here where we've discovered things about God, deeper and richer experiences about Him that we could not know prior. And so you have a choice to make. First one, do you stay where you are? So you'll stay in your current position. Nothing changes. If anything, it gets harder. You can choose to do that. I hope you don't. Second one is you can choose to retreat. So you can go back to everything that you've known here. You can go back to your comforts of Christianity and it's all good. You're loved. Third option is you can run away from your faith altogether. Now, I don't think that's what you're going to do. That's why you're here, but it's a very real option. And unfortunately, many people do that. Or the fourth and final option is that you bust through, you push through, and you enter into the deeper and richer experiences that God is actually inviting you into. And so it's my heart, it's my hope, and this is why Revive is here, is that you would make that choice to push through. And so if you want to be free to soar again with God, you want to enjoy deeper intimacy with Him all over again, and not intimacy as you've known it before, but even better. Or you want to have that overflowing joy of life. Maybe you just want to be more resilient for future challenges that you don't buckle again. Or you just want to fulfill your place in the kingdom. You want to run your race and steward your race well with God. Then I'm going to invite you to either, number one, book a call. And we'll jump on a call. We'll talk more about your story. I'll share a little bit about the Revive program, the what's, the details about it. And if we both decide that we're a good fit, great. We can talk about next steps and get you plugged into the Revive program and get you free. Or if you're not sure if you're ready for that yet, then send me a DM on Instagram. We can connect and we can touch base, but you have a choice to make. Do you stay where you are? Do you retreat? Do you run from your faith? Or do you push forward? And it's my heart that you would push forward. So book a call or send me a message on Instagram and know that your good Father is in the business of redemption and there is so much more waiting for you on the other side of church hurt.